Fashion once had the power to ruin your life, not your reputation, not your wallet, your life. In medieval Europe, a pair of shoes could mark you as dangerous, immoral, or illegally ambitious. Wear the wrong ones, and you weren't just out of style. You were breaking the law. You could be fined, humiliated, even jailed. Today, on Ancient Roots Uncovered, we're stepping straight into a forgotten world where footwear was surveillance, class control, and silent rebellion stitched into leather. In the Middle Ages, society was built like a ladder bolted to the ground. Kings at the top, nobles below, merchants somewhere in the middle, peasants at the bottom. Everyone was expected to look their rank. Not just in castles or courts, but in the street, the market, the church, even the fields. Clothing laws, known today as sumptuary laws, existed to freeze that ladder in place. And shoes became one of the easiest ways to spot a social climber. Shoes were visible. Always. Even when clothes were patched and faded, footwear stood out. Good leather meant money. Decorative shapes meant leisure. Long pointed toes meant you weren't spending your days digging or hauling. So governments across medieval Europe began regulating footwear, especially for peasants and labourers. Not because of comfort, not because of safety, but because shoes had become symbols of social ambition, and ambition was suspicious. By the 1300s, one shoe in particular was causing panic. Long, narrow, exaggerated, curling at the tip like a devil's grin. These were known today as poulain-style shoes, sometimes called crack-toes or beaks. Some were so long they had to be tied to the leg with strings to keep the wearer from tripping. They were impractical, flashy, and unmistakably fashionable. At first they were elite, courtly, trend-driven, but fashions spread. Cobblers copied designs, merchants bought them. Then, inevitably, peasants began wearing them too, and that's when laws stepped in. Suddenly, toe length became a legal issue. In several regions, the permitted length of a shoe's tip was directly tied to social rank. Nobles could wear the longest, knights slightly shorter, merchants shorter still, peasants almost none at all. Some laws specified exact measurements, a few inches for the working class. Anything longer was a fine. Repeated offence could mean confiscation or public punishment. This wasn't about safety, it was about visibility. You could spot a social offender from across the street. Medieval peasants were supposed to wear simple turn shoes, soft leather, rounded toes, thin soles, cheap to make, easy to repair, easy to destroy. These shoes, you know, they mirrored their expected lives. Grounded, practical, replaceable. Bright colours were discouraged and, well, decorative cutouts were suspicious. Long toes were outright dangerous. Some regions even regulated the quality of leather peasants could use. Heavy cowhide was for workers. Fine calfskin was for those who didn't touch mud for a living. Shoes were meant to announce without words, "I belong at the bottom." And if your shoes told a different story, you were in trouble. In a world without ID cards or cameras, clothing was documentation. Shoes were walking records. They told authorities whether you worked, travelled, fought, prayed, or profited. A peasant in fashionable footwear didn't just look odd. He looked like a lie. Officials worried that blurred appearance meant blurred obedience. If a farm labourer dressed like a merchant, what stopped him from acting like one? Trading without permission, carrying weapons, demanding rights, marrying above his station. Clothing laws, including shoe bans, were a way to lock people mentally where they were already trapped physically. Shoes were the most dangerous item because they were tied to movement, travel, freedom, status. A peasant who walked like a lord unsettled the entire system. Breaking shoe laws wasn't usually a hanging offence, but it was a constant bleed. Fines were common, and fines hurt peasants more than anyone. Some towns forced offenders to cut their shoes in public, slicing the pointed tips off in marketplaces as a warning. In extreme cases, authorities confiscated footwear entirely, forcing people to walk home barefoot. In a medieval town, that wasn't just painful, it was humiliating. Repeated violations could bring jail time, or expulsion from guild areas, or loss of the right to trade. Your shoes could shut doors long before they opened any. Because fashion isn't really about fabric, it's about voice. A longer shoe said, "I'm not just what you think I am." A finer leather said, "I deserve better." A curled toe said, "I see the world beyond this field." People didn't wear outlawed shoes because they were comfortable. They wore them because they were loud, because they reached, because they leaned forward into a future medieval life didn't promise them. Shoes were portable rebellion. You couldn't change your land, you couldn't change your birth, but you could change your feet. And every step in forbidden shoes was a small, dangerous performance. The irony is thick. Authorities claimed long shoes were sinful, wasteful, even immoral. Some preachers compared them to claws of demons or horns of pride. Yet the same elites condemning them wore the longest ones of all. Because imitation meant erosion. If peasants could look noble, the noble stopped looking chosen. If status could be stitched, it could be unstitched. And medieval power rested heavily on the belief that social order came from God, not money or mood. Shoes threatened that illusion. These forgotten shoe laws expose something timeless. Control always starts with the visible: hair, fabric, language, movement. When power feels shaky, it regulates appearance. Medieval peasants didn't just fight with tools or taxes. They fought with leather and thread, with silhouettes, with inches of forbidden toe. And even when the laws worked, they failed. Because, fashion never truly stays put. By the late Middle Ages, extreme pointed shoes faded, not because of law, but because taste moved on. Rounder styles returned, then broader, then taller. The bands dissolved, but the impulse to control how people look never disappeared. It only changed outfits. So, the next time someone tells you clothes don't matter, remember this. There was a time when a shoe could make you a criminal. A time when walking the wrong way in the wrong leather with the wrong shape at your feet meant you were stepping outside the world you were born into. And that was the real crime. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden side of history, make sure you subscribe to Ancient Roots Uncovered. Share this story with someone who loves the strange, the forgotten, and the outlawed. And step with us again into the past, where even the smallest things cast the longest shadows.